Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Prakash Amar Surya, CEO of Kashmar Productions, which is, for those who love gaming and anime, a company that focuses on building concerts and projects for things like Dragon Ball Z or Stardew Valley. So if you love those things, that's what I do. But today, I'll be your host and moderator for today's panel, Becoming an Entrepreneur. First off, I just want to thank everyone for making the time today to attend today's session, especially during your lunch hour. I'm getting started right away because we have a lot to cover with three fantastic panelists. So, want to make sure we have enough time for all the questions to be answered. But we do have some attendees who have been to these level up sessions in the past and some who have been attending for the first time. If this is your first time, just want to say welcome. For those who don't know, the Level Up event series is a program that's done by York University to invite alumni leaders to help new grads navigate life and work after getting your degree. So we cover everything from professional networking to career development and all life skills. So if you want to attend these sessions, you're always in for a great time. Before we get started, I want to begin by offering York's land acknowledgement. So, although we aren't all in the same location, we recognize that many Indigenous nations have longstanding relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of the university. York acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been taken care of by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. Is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge that the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, this territory is subjected by the Dish with the One Spoon Wimpum Belt Covenant, an agreement that peacefully shares and cares for the Great Lakes region. Of course, it's not just enough to talk about acknowledgement, so I do encourage you all to support and learn more about the Indigenous communities in your areas. And logistically, if there's at any time, if you need any help with this experience or have any questions about the content, feel free to click on the Q&A button on the bottom right hand of your screen. Our team is on standby and ready to help you. And with that out of the way, let's jump into what you're all here for. I'm honored to introduce our alumni speakers and panelists, Susanna Al-Sayed, Nick DeCipio, and Dennis Goria. They're all on camera. They're starting to wave, all smiling faces, ready to go. And you know what? I'm going to pass it over to them to introduce themselves, and I'll do it on the order that I see on my screen. So we'll do Nick, Dennis, and then Susanna. And so what I'm going to do just to talk about your self-introduction, we're just going to talk about your current role, what you studied at York, and your fondest memory of student life. So we're going to talk about your York identity. So Nick, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Prakash. And hey, everybody, my name is Nick. I'm a recently graduated alum at York University, of course. I graduated from mechanical engineering at Lausanne School of Engineering. Right now, I'm the CEO and founder of Pantheon Prototyping, the startup I founded actually while I was a student at York. And my fondest memory of York, I would say, is Best Lausanne, the startup community within Lausanne that is where I found my roots. And it's still a great community that I'm involved with to this day.
Thank you, Nick. I'll reserve my comments for after all three of you go, so I'll pass it over to Dennis.
Thank you, Prakash. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. I am a graduate of 2020. I think it was in the middle of the pandemic, so I'm not sure the exact full date anymore, but graduate of Schulich School of Business. A lot of fond memories being at York. I think first year and second year, the stress of getting your first statistics exam and failing that is probably my fondest memory. Aside from that, I've been an entrepreneur for majority of my life, so I had the fortune of being able to start my business in second year of uni and had a few kind of side gigs before that too. And excited just to be able to maybe experience, share some of the tribulations of starting a business in school and balancing and trying to maintain marks and whatnot for demanding parents. So that's me in a nutshell. Hand it off back to you.
Thank you, Dennis. And Susanna.
Hello, everyone. I guess Prakash, like I'm wearing the right sweater for this. So hello, everyone. My name is Susanna Al-Sayed. I'm the founder and CEO of Evolutes Inc., an independent global branding, marketing, copywriting, and website development agency. So I also have the honor of being awarded the top 30 under 30 alumni for York University in 2022. I am a lifestyle writer, world traveler, content creator, and a polyglot, and I'm currently writing a self-help book that will be published at the end of the year as well. And I have 2 bilingual bachelors from Glendon, a master's degree from Kiel, and I'm currently doing my PhD at York, so I am still York living. So the experience continues, and I'm very excited. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. And now I'll share my comments. It's really awe-inspiring to see that all three of you are successful people who have gone outside of York University and done the things you've done, but they're still connected to the university, which is a privilege for the university, but also great for folks on the call to note that York University will always be part of your journey. So with that, let's get into more about who you are. Some of you already introduced a little bit more about it, but let's just jump right into that question about entrepreneurship. So I'm going to start by asking you more about your companies or more about the projects you work on. Imagine me on Shark Tank. You got to do your pitch to me. How would you sell me your company, the products you do, your customers? And once again, we'll go in the same order with Nick, Dennis, and then Susanna.
Sure thing. So what I like to say about Pantheon is the ultimate resource for accelerating innovation for anyone in the hardware product space. We work with a range of people, both student founders and lead engineers at a variety of different companies in a range of industries to innovate quickly and affordably right here in Canada, actually in Ontario, that's where we're based. And we have a range of 3D printing technologies, a whole talented team of mechanical designers, electrical designers, and we focus on the prototyping space so that people can really bring their ideas to life with as little barriers as possible.
Fantastic. No, I think it's very concise. I know exactly what you're doing, and it sounds like a very innovative business, which we'll dive into a bit more. Dennis.
I'll contact you later, Nick, for some prototypes. That's a really cool firm. Dennis, so my role is CEO, but typically kind of working in sales. The company, in a nutshell, we're doing e-commerce 360 for mid-market and enterprise brands. So if you're a brand that sells online, we run your entire e-commerce infrastructure, front end, back end. We staff it. We have very technical consultants, so ex-McKinsey, Accenture, Goldman Sachs type people. Very experienced consultants coming in from industry that lead these accounts with our clients. And then we staff out full development teams, senior engineers, solutions architects. So really, really techy. We've been blessed to be working with some of the best brands in the world. We are Drake's e-commerce agency, which obviously has kind of exploded over the last couple of years with this tour and all the great things happening with OVO. And as a Canadian brand, one of the things I love is being able to work with other Canadian brands. So brands like Mastermind Toys that we support and others of that nature. It's just been a crazy, cool experience to see it all come together. But in a nutshell, e-commerce 360. So like plug and play, almost like your toaster oven. You don't think about the electricity, right? So you just kind of get it. So that's what we're looking to be for e-commerce.
Fantastic, Dennis. Again, I'll save my comments till the end, so I'll pass it over to Susanna.
Well, it's hard to follow these amazing 2 companies, but I will try. So my company is Evolutes Inc. So we do the, I guess, front end experience of what these gentlemen are producing. So we do branding, marketing, copywriting, UI UX design, website development, SEO optimization, and help companies build their brands from ground up. And then to penetrate the market. And we also rebrand existing brands that don't work anymore or feel a bit outdated for the actual user. So most of my clients are from the security sector, cybersecurity and IT. But we also have clients in construction, real estate, law, jewelry, and entertainment. So our biggest differentiator, and I always like to state that since we are on Shark Tank as well, is that we are able to operate in 12 different languages to target different parts of the world. And we have team members with different subject matter expertise located in different countries. So technically speaking, we cover about 7 time zones and we're able to work 24/7.
And now I can say that all three companies and all three of you are fantastic and quite talented. It's funny because if you think about anybody on this call who's looking to start a business, all three of your companies could be worked with by any one of you. So you have an end-to-end experience with all three panelists today. If you three were to start one company, it'd be unstoppable. I know we're on Shark Tank, but I just want to say if I had any money, I would definitely invest. But because I don't, I'm out. But that's the reason why. But otherwise, I would say your companies are fantastic. And so it's a perfect segue to my first question. Your companies that you mentioned, and I'll go in reverse order this time. So to give you a heads up, it'll be Susanna, Dennis, and then Nick. You've you have really unique ideas, and they're things. I'll be honest. When I was thinking about my time at York University, I probably wouldn't think about these company ideas that you had. So what first motivated or inspired the vision for your startup? Like, what was that journey like from the onset?
Okay, so COVID did for me. So Evolutes was born, it's my COVID baby. It was born in July 2020. And why it started is because I didn't have to commute 2 to 4 hours anymore a day. So I gained so much time in my hands to explore ideas and have a bit of a life. And so I saw a gap in the market within the security industry, and I decided to tackle it. What the gap was is that it really depends on your market, but within my market, it's really prone on word of mouth, handshake, face-to-face interactions, and that was all seized during COVID, and because we couldn't attend conferences anymore. And then if you looked at the security companies' online presence, it was outdated or sometimes not even existent. And I had skills in both areas. I understand the world of security. I understand the world of marketing. So I thought I would propose my services and do something about it to help businesses not go under because they didn't have an online presence. And it just started off with me thinking I'm gonna be like this side hustler that I just gonna make a couple $1,000s and like celebrate that. But it ended up in about 2.5 years becoming an operation of 16 people, and now we are looking to hire 17.
No, it's a fantastic story, and it goes back to that famous quote of like every crisis is an opportunity, which is really great because everyone might think that when you start a business, it's got to be like, yep, you know what you're doing, you've known it since you were a child, it's kind of there, but it's great that your innovative mind kind of took place when it's probably the time when people struggle the most. So for those on the call, if you're feeling like there's never there is an ideal time to start a business, I would probably push back to say there isn't. And Susanna's story does a great job of showcasing that. So thank you. Dennis.
I'm inspired by you, Susanna. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. I had a similar kind of impetus in that really we took advantage of COVID, but I was always fairly had this entrepreneurial bug, so to speak. So I think starting in university, kind of first year was when I had a clothing company, and I used that to be able to pay my way through school. So that was just its kind of side hustle, so to speak. That was very brutal to build and scale. So I closed that up and made enough money to pay through my tuition, my books, and living expenses. So I was grateful to graduate without any of that student debt, right? Which was kind of my main goal. Second year of uni was when things kind of pivoted a bit. Uh, that was when the agency started, and I focused a little bit more, but split between school and running an agency and being in class and trying to work out deals. We really got kind of a combination of luck, being at the right time, saying the right things, and all that. We won Mastermind Toys as a national account under our agency, so we were able to really grow very fast. So 2.5 years later, kind of very similar story to Susanna, because we've ended up being around 18, 20 people now. So as we kind of have added more companies to our roster, so Title is sort of the e-commerce agency, and then we have 3 other firms in our roster. So in total, we're about 50 people now, kind of still very boutique, but I'm really enjoying that kind of small family business feeling because my business partners are quite literally family as well. And I would say the whole vision. So personally speaking, one thing that's helped me kind of figure out what do I want to do? How do I fall into this? This was kind of by accident and also by design in a way. I have 5 personal values. So in terms of my own personal life, I set them out this way. So number 1 is own your destiny. So kind of make your own path. Number 2, make it happen. So if you're telling me this is what you want to do, okay, do it, right? Number 3, solve tomorrow's problems today. So I'm big on kind of sort of, I don't want my staff to be doing this. I'd rather they be present. I'm very often not present. I'm thinking about tomorrow's problems and how can I solve those. Number 4, build on it. So if you have a foundation, continue to build on it. Be a good person, be a good servant leader. And number 5, control what you can control. You can only control how you can react to a situation. You can't control external situations, right? So these 5 values have really helped me kind of, I would say, steer my direction on what I want to do. So a lot of these values are actually currently embodied in the company as well, and they help us in things like hiring and what decisions we want to do as we roll out new departments, we hire up new, very specialized staff. These are things that we look at primarily instead of things like just outcomes. So that's, I hope, a little bit, I hope insightful from an experiencer perspective, but I'll hand it back to you, Prakash.
No, definitely is, and it's giving me ideas on the next questions I want to ask each and every one of you. So I'll after Nick provides his answer, I'll tell you my approach. So Nick, I gotta pass it off to you. What inspired your startup idea?
Yeah, so actually, I really like the term, Susanna, of COVID baby, because I found myself in a very similar situation. I was still in mechanical engineering as an undergraduate at the time, and I found myself with a lot of extra time, not really sure what to do with it. My uncle, who's a computer engineer, he owns his own firm. He happened to just buy me this very cheap 3D printer, and I still remember the conversation. He told me that doesn't have enough time to make these custom parts that he needs for servers and other things, and at the same time he wanted me to keep busy with something, and that singular $200 3D printer that he bought me to make parts for him was the catalyst for where Pantheon is today, because I fell in love with 3D printing. I fell in love with designing and making things a lot more than I already was as an engineering student, and from that one 3D printer we've now grown into a firm that has over 10 3D printing technologies with a lean team of about 5 to 6 engineers working at a time. And we've been able to make a lot of impact in a variety of different industries. We've worked with aerospace companies, even some student founders at York University, and it's been very exciting. It's been an exciting journey, especially as a young founder like myself. And yeah, it's just the ability to take something that I was passionate about and turn it into the business that I'm running today. I'm very happy that I was able to make that decision.
So it's funny because I think all 3 companies have COVID inspirations, and so hopefully people on the call don't think that you need to have a global pandemic to come up with a business idea, but it does seem to help, and I can attest as a 4th person on the call that my company also generated in the span of COVID, so there might be correlation there, but not causation. But it's good to see that. I think it's more about the mindset that all 3 of you had reasons for why you started your specific companies to be what they are. It's great to have 3 diverse panelists who are successful in their own rights, but in their own paths that aren't really comparable across all 3. So we're going to get a bit deeper into it. So I'm going to change the approach right now. This is something I haven't run by the panelists, so this is on the spot. But the idea is the next 3 questions, I'm going to ask them specifically to each panelist. So based off the stories, you've now learned who they are. I think it'll be much more fruitful if I focus the next question. So I'm going to start with, I'm actually going to start with Nick, because I've been giving Nick a bit of a rest in the last question. So I'm going to jump to you, Nick. You mentioned 3D printing. You mentioned your time at Lassonde, but I want to ask you, just getting more to the human of it, what are some of the biggest hurdles or challenges that you faced in establishing your startup? Coming up with 3D printing is something that is not new, but for those who haven't seen it before, or for those who already know what it is, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face with your company?
Yeah, so I guess there's actually 2 challenges that I faced initially, and there's still also an ongoing one that I'm currently facing to this day. The first challenge that I experienced was actually starting a business while I was a student, especially with the heavy workload of engineering. It wasn't exactly something that I would consider easy. I often found myself having to pick my time between classes or doing work for Pantheon, usually choosing Pantheon because it was just something I enjoyed doing a lot more than attending lectures and doing work for school. But at the end of the day, I made it work. It was, again, not the easiest thing, but I think it was very rewarding, and I was able to find that balance somehow and get to the point that I am here today. And the second challenge, and you kind of touched upon this a bit, Prakash, is 3D printing is something that is not new. It has been around for a while, but the challenge that I faced was how do we leverage 3D printing into something that can bring a lot of value to those that may not be too familiar with it, but even those that might actually use it in their daily life. And that's where we kind of focused on the idea of targeting in the focus of prototyping, and not just offering a 3D printing service, but kind of having that one-stop shop effect where people can come to us with an idea and we work with them using our manufacturing technologies, our design expertise, and bring that idea to life so they can have a solid physical prototype right in front of them. And that's something that to some people takes convincing here and there, but once they've actually worked with us, it's very easy to convince them that our service does bring a lot of value, especially when people are working through those initial stages of iterating and ideating that idea that they really want to fully realize.
No, it's great. It's great to hear the challenges behind it as well as how you kind of address it. Going back to that scheduling one, we talked about managing school with your company. Did you have a secret to kind of like persevering or pushing through to especially through those hard times? Like, was it that you loved your company? It was more of a passion project than it was work, or would you have some other mindset or tips and tricks for those on the call?
Yeah, so I guess passion was definitely one of the biggest drivers. It's something that motivated me from the beginning to this day to continue working on Pantheon and continue growing it. Because I started Pantheon due to my love of making things and solving problems, it was pretty easy for me to justify the work I was doing to actually grow the business. At the same time, COVID actually was a bit helpful given that all of our lectures were online. So I'd find myself oftentimes working out of what used to be our old workshop in my basement, having lectures play in the background while I was working on my printers, doing some CAD work for projects. And yeah, I mean, I guess I just made it work with the situation that I had. And at times there were things I had to sacrifice back, like when we came back to in-person learning. Some classes I had to miss because of certain work-related things, but at the end of the day, it all worked out, and I'm pretty content that it worked the way it did.
Nick, I ask these questions to try to humanize you, and then your answers just show me how much more of like a robot you are in terms of how many things you can do in a short amount of time. So it's fantastic how successful you are with all the things you do. But I think it's really tremendous for people to hear like kind of you can do schooling and also work on your projects at the same time. So thanks so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, of course.
Suzanne, I'm going to pass it over to you. So you've mentioned in your introduction just the various things you've done, like, especially as a polyglot. It's already hard enough to be successful in one thing. To do it many times over and to be publishing a book later this year, I can find that to be definitely intimidating. But to again ask you a question to humanize it, when was your first moment that you would say that you felt successful, or like, especially with all the different things you do, how do you define success for yourself?
It's a good question, and I made notes on that to make sure that I answered correctly. Uh, so success is a really interesting word, and I have a love and hate relationship with it because I am my worst critic, and I'm the hardest person on myself, and so no one really can define that word for me other than me. But there were several moments I felt successful when I got my first client, when I quit my full-time job to do Evolutes full-time, when I hit my first six figures, when I see my team members achieve like amazing things in their professional careers, or even leaving Evolutes to pursue like their law degree or their engineering degree or start their own company because everyone has their dreams, and in some corporations they like to hold on to people and not let them open up their wings, and I like to nurture people and be like, thank you for your service, and you go accomplish your dream. And I guess that for me is a definition of success. Or having mentees, like being able to mentor people and actually having a voice, and helping people realize what the missing piece was to their success.
And do you feel like you were always that person, Susanna? Because it seems like you're a great leader in helping others, whether it's through your company or mentoring them. Did you feel like you did that at York University? Was that something you developed after York University? How would you?
Okay, good question. I was a professional athlete for 12 years of my life. I was pre-selected for the 2012 Summer Olympics in London, but I didn't make it due to an injury. And so being around like coaches, being around people that trying to push you toward a specific dream and working for it for uh 12, 13, 14 years really puts you into a perspective that it's not only about you, it's about this accomplished goal that you're trying to achieve. And I guess I brought that into academia, and from academia I brought that into entrepreneurship. So it's like transferable skills. So guys, if you have transferable skills or a specific niche, you can still apply that to other industries. So you can put that on your resume and try to maneuver the words properly. So don't worry, transferable skills are really, really good. But I think I've always had it. I also have Evolutes Academy. So I founded Evolutes Academy, and I can share the link in the comments. It's helping students position themselves in the marketplace. So I feel like when I was in university, there were resources, but they were not the resources that I would need to position myself according to my niche and really understand my differentiator as a student. And so I made a course to help people even further understand how special they are. So I guess I've always been like this, but I just feel you are trying to humanize Nick. And I guess having this human approach to anything that you do, especially in business and working with people, is what is gonna put you into like an abundant state for different opportunities.
And similar to Nick, Susanna, I'm trying to humanize you, and again, I find out that you're a potential Olympian, and so it's good for those on the call who are athletes who might think like, hey, business is not for me. But to your point, transferable mindsets. Athletes have some of the strongest mindsets, especially if you're trying to do school at the same time. Transferring into the world of business, like Kobe did it, like and so others do it as well too. And so Suzanne's another example of somebody who's persevered through different challenges and also in various areas. So thanks for sharing.
Of course.
And Dennis, don't think I forgot about you. So with your company, it's really impressive that you were able to secure a contract with Mastermind. It's one of my favorite toy companies. I love the Rubik's Cubes. That's what I go for. Especially graduating from York University, you can be easily seen as like a young entrepreneur. The way you speak is quite eloquent, but maybe people don't know that right away. How do you market your business when it was first starting off? Like, how do you get people to take a chance on you, especially for those on the call who are trying to do the same thing?
Good question. I think, and sorry, maybe a stupid answer because you wouldn't be asking it if it wasn't a good question. But really, I would say there was no easy way. This was a hustle, and I'm sure, my two panelists here can agree with that. It's like the same way there's ageism on the older side of people that we may see in our society, how people may treat them differently, which I don't agree with. You have ageism on a young level as well, right? So early days, kind of beginning of university, first year and second year, I remember vividly a lot of the things I had to do were just things that people would not sign up for. So, if I'm going to go meet a client or meet someone that might potentially introduce me to someone that it might be a stepping stone, I have zero guarantee of this person being like even giving me the time of day, but I would take like the bus in torrential rains and winds and the snowstorms we have in Canada and Toronto. So, kind of putting yourself out there is obviously needed. But to a certain degree, I feel, as I mentioned earlier, like my values are very true to what I feel kind of helps guide me in my decisions and how I behave. So that first value of own your own destiny is something that's very personal to me. Not everyone has that type of drive. So that achiever or activator drive of like, I'm just gonna go get this, right? I was fortunate to have that kind of innately, and I think that sort of, gave me that drive. I do know a lot of people that don't necessarily have that, but it is true. You get out of it what you put into it. So looking at it from that perspective, anyone kind of very early in their journey, there's no easy elevator to success as much as people would love to lead you to believe to think there is. You got to put in the time, but things do compound very quickly. I found, within a couple of years, I was able to quickly hire up a team, rally more support, and just through those experiences is really what gave me more confidence to sort of double down on these things and say, okay, we do know what we're doing. But also at the same time, be aware of what you don't know you're doing and be aware of those gaps. Don't have the ego in your way to think that you can do it better than other people because you likely cannot, right? We can't do everything. And really just being real with yourself, understanding where your skills are and what you can play yourself to, I think is key. So hopefully that answers your question.
No, and definitely not a stupid answer at all. It was fantastic. I think you hit on some points there, and it seems to be honest. Like one, I love that you're a hustler. I love that you, with despite your success, it's what got you there was your again perseverance to showcase. Like I'll do what it takes. Like especially in the beginning to get your feet off the ground. And so maybe a more of a philosophical question as a follow up to what you mentioned. You mentioned that drive that you yourself was innate. Do you feel like it can be learned for those on the call who may not feel, you know what, I don't feel like I have that thing for me just yet that I would hustle that way for, like take a 2 hour bus across the way. Do you think it can be learned or taught?
So
Feel free to
values
be
are,
honest. Be honest.
yeah, values are one thing that I think around age 20, 25, like they're not going to change. You're not going to change your core values unless you're going through something incredibly traumatic or some sort of tragedy in your life is typically when people experience some deviation from their values. So maybe someone very close to you passes away and that's something that really things like that, right? So at around age 20, either you have that value or you don't. But I think the key is that it doesn't really matter. The cards that you've been dealt are the cards that you've been dealt, right? There's pluses and minuses to everything. So I can say own your own destiny is a great, value or strength that I have that I feel has given me a lot of benefit. It's a double-edged sword. I find myself, in deep water because of this one strength. It is also a severe kind of not handicap, but it impacts your life in different domino effect ways that you wouldn't really realize. But once you peel back the onions, you realize, oh, okay, well, that's not the greatest situation, right? So there's always a pro and con to everything. I would not look at it so brutalistically to say you have to develop that value. Those values are very personal to me, and that's what makes up my kind of makeup of myself, my DNA, and that then gets transferred to those companies or whatever companies I work on, right? So there's an element of these values in the companies you create and the mission and vision that you seek out, right? But it doesn't mean that if you don't have this, that you're not going to be able to execute it or be successful. What I do think is that if you do strength tests, so one thing that I would definitely recommend for any entrepreneur or anyone looking to really take this a little bit more seriously is read a lot. So, pick up the 7 Habits. Like that's a classic book. That's something that like take that to heart, read it, study it, read it 3 times over again, make notes on it. Like these are all philosophical things that are kind of time and time again tested and tried and tested through time. Like these are kind of things that have been taught over time that haven't really changed, just the way that they're articulated has changed, right? So like different writing styles and whatnot. So if you're to take that up and do strength tests and really get to know yourself, like your personal strengths, you can derive your own values off of that. So if you know that, let's say you're very disciplined, perhaps that is a strength that then can become a value. So a value is something that is actionable, hopefully. So in my world, one of my strengths is discipline. My value is control what you can. I understand I can't control everything, but what I can control. So I can control how I can react, I control how I show up. So if something to me is important, I will prioritize that time and make sure it happens, right? So if you are someone that is really looking to work on yourself, like look inside, don't blame others for your circumstances, work on yourself first, identify what your strengths are, and off of that, you can then identify what your gaps are. So if you know that perhaps the whole own your own destiny is not where you fit in, fine, that's okay. Find someone that has that if you feel like you need to pair up with them. Like you're not going to create a big enterprise on your own. You may, right? But it's a little bit lonelier that way. I find having partners and things like that, sharing the success, like that's one thing that's helped me out. So just being real with yourself, understanding where you're at, where others are at, and how you can maybe, create something wonderful together. It doesn't have to be solo, right? Sorry for the long-winded answer, but back to you, Prakash.
Not at all. I love the details, and it's funny you hit on a concept which actually I learned at York University in one of my classes. you can't control what happens to you, but you can always control how you react to it. And I think that lesson is probably the most important lesson I've ever learned in kind of challenging a world that, to your point, we can't control. And so it's a great reminder for those, and great things for people to keep in mind as they think about starting up their companies and run into those challenges, and run into those circumstances. So thank you, Dennis. And it's funny, we're exactly at the time point we should be for me to mention this. So for those audience members who have questions, feel free to throw your questions into the Q&A section there. We'll be answering them along the way as we ask our questions. So definitely please do so. If you have questions geared towards any specific person, please put their name in the question. If not, we'll ask it to all panelists broadly. So yeah, definitely send your questions in the chat. And serendipitously, we got our first one from Esha. Thank you so much for kicking it off. So Esha has a question for all three of you, actually, Nick, Dennis, and Susanna. As someone who is thinking about starting a business, there can be a lot of anxiety. What tip could all three of you maybe provide for someone who's contemplating how and where to start? And they thank you for your answers in advance. So we'll start with Susanna, and then we'll go Nick and Dennis.
Ladies first, right? Okay, so anxiety is completely normal, and it's good that you have anxiety. It means that you care. But how do I battle it? I mean, I've suffered from imposter syndrome the entire time I've been an entrepreneur, and I think any successful person or trying to be successful or an ambitious or passionate person really has that feeling of, why would someone listen to me? Why would I be able to accomplish something? Why am I relevant if there's 1,000 millions of people that are trying to do what I'm doing, and I will be the one that will be successful? And these thoughts, they're normal, but you have to answer these questions for yourself. Like, so the question is, how do you position yourself for success? What was the question again, Prakash?
It was, what tip would you give for someone who's contemplating where to start with your business, especially if
Okay.
anxiety is on your mind?
So you have to answer your why. At the end of the day is, why do you want to do a business? Do you want to do a business to help others? Do you want to do a business to get financial freedom? Do you want to do a business because you don't want to work the 9 to 5? Why do you want to do the business? Why did you even get the idea to do a business? Who is behind this idea? It's really diving deep into yourself and understanding what you want to be and who you want to be and why you have this idea. And then after that, you'll be able to understand how you are going to do it. What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to do? Are you willing to not sleep for weeks because you get so into the idea, or work 2-3 jobs to get that idea running? Like, what are you willing to do? And so it's good to have anxiety, as I said. Like, it's good to care. It's good to have ideas, but it's at the end of the day, it's really what you are willing to do and why you are willing to do it.
Great answers. Yes, knowing your why and the reason for what you do definitely will help you persevere through the anxiety. So great perspective. Nick.
So I just want to say that was an amazing response, and I'm not sure how I'm going to follow with that, but definitely when I had anxieties of starting Pantheon, and even now with the various decisions I need to make through my business, I like to look at the profound words of Nike and just do it. That's really, for me, what it comes down to is you can't really let yourself get bogged down with these anxieties. Yes, you have to go through those whys and really ask yourself why you're doing something. But at the end of the day, once you've actually found that answer, you shouldn't let anything hold you back. You should do what you can to actually get to that goal that you want to achieve. And the one thing about entrepreneurs, I'm sure Dennis and Susanna, both of you, we're incredibly resilient. And we can make gold with whatever we have in front of ourselves. That's really what it comes down to. It's being adaptable and it's being resilient. And if you have those traits and you have that idea, at that point, it's really just up to you to give yourself the green light and move forward and actually achieve what you want to achieve.
Great point, Nick. And I think it's it really is that. Like I think of it as skydiving, you know, you just gotta jump off that plane, just take the leap. Once you do it, you love it. But if you're afraid of heights, up until then, you're screaming all the way. But it's that nervous excitement that I think Susanna mentions. Like the anxiety doesn't really go away, but it shows that you care about it. But it means you're alive, you know. Like it's better to be nervous and anxious about something than feel dead about something that should be your passion project. So I agree with Nick. Just do it. Sometimes it just helps to take that leap of faith. Dennis.
Take a small kind of book out of Susanna's answer. I think the start with why is such a powerful approach. So right on that, for anyone that hasn't read any of Simon Sinek's work, please do pick up some of his books. Like these are the Bibles of like find your why, start with why. These are like the classics of really what you need to understand one-on-one of like really truly what is the essence of what you're trying to do. Beyond that, I don't think your first business matters as much as we all think it does, right? There's going to be times that you might start something that you stick with for the rest of your life. You might find something that you absolutely hate and that you don't want to do, that you spend maybe a year or two, you want to get rid of this business, you close it up. The key is that you as an individual, so not looking to give anyone advice, by the way, this just experience share of what's worked for me. I think everyone has their own journey. It's like I'm in no place to be giving anyone advice on this call because everyone has nuances to their life, right? I don't want to kind of set that off, but really what's worked well for me in my circumstances has been to understand that, nothing is static, so change is constant in life. Truthfully, similar to Nick yourself with the whole just do it mentality, that is one of my values of like make it happen. So it's not just do it, but make it happen is resonates a lot with me. So just the mentality of like, you know what, if you have something you want to do it now, because really all you're doing is you're burning time. You're going to make a bunch of excuses. The timing is never going to be right. But I think through those tribulations, you learn a lot about yourself, about your business, your preferences. So the first business might not be perfect, and that's okay. But as you learn about yourself and what you like, then you adapt, you pivot, right? And that's just normal. So where we started and where we are today is completely like I can't even explain how different it is, right? So I think really looking at it from that perspective of like, even if you don't have an idea, there's a lot of resources. There's global student competitions for entrepreneurs. There's grants that you can get from the government. There's things that you can be doing today, now. You don't have to leave your class or ditch or anything like that, but you can do it after hours, on weekend, whatnot, right? So just be smart with how you prioritize your day in terms of, where I was kind of looking back at it, very grateful in terms of my own experience was that I had the ability to actually manage and balance my schooling and learn from that on top of learning through my business. So like combining the two, I did my business degree at York. So kind of learning about business and then doing business at the same time was a really unique combination because you're learning the theoretical and then you're implementing it, right? So it's a really good way of, at least for me personally, like I'm reading something, I'm regurgitating information, doing exams, and then actually doing it in real life, right? So those two pieces, hopefully that helps some people on the call today. But if anything, if anyone wants to chat offline, always very approachable on LinkedIn. Feel free to send us a message. I'm sure everyone on this call is probably really approachable. So
And I'm gonna take that cue, Dennis, as nods from everyone. If you would like to reach out to them, they've all nodded, they've given their consent. Feel free to reach out to LinkedIn and follow up on their businesses or their journeys. Definitely thank you, Dennis, for opening up the offer and everyone else for agreeing to it. Keep your questions coming in. I'm gonna let the panelists know. You can probably see it. We have a ton of questions coming through. So I'm going to abandon all my questions. We're going to focus on our audience here. But it's going to be a lightning round because we have a great, very engaged audience. So let's have some fun. So I'm going to point questions at certain individuals to kind of focus them. I'm going to start with you, Susanna. We have a question from Tara. So Tara wants to ask you a question, recognizing that you are going through a PhD right now. How do you find balancing pursuing a PhD with running a business and all the other things you're doing? They would love some tips on how you're able to balance all those things.
And being in a relationship, which is another full-time job. Thank you for the question, Tara. I think my secret is minute-to-minute organization. I plan every Sunday, I plan my entire week, and then I change up how my month looks like. So let me unblur my screen so I can show you what I'm looking at. Okay, bam. So this is my week at a glance. I color code everything and I add on some stuff that are like relevant and not relevant, what can be done. If they're in red, that means they'll go next week or it's not relevant anymore. Greens are done and the gray ones actually go in here because the gray ones become so important that they require their own page in order to be like prioritized. And I do that every Sunday. It takes me about an hour and a half, but I organize the chaos in my mind. And then after that, I transfer from paper because writing is good because what you write, you keep it in your brain more. At least that works for me. So after I read it out, I put it on my Google Docs, and I'm not going to share my Google Docs because it is scary, but it is a colorful map of like yellows is for my company, dark gray is for the PhD, purple is for my personal appointments, green, which is like green and happy, it's my social life. There's not as many greens, but that's okay, working on it. But it's prioritizing things that are important to you. So if you have a specific goal and if you have to ask yourself, is it a short term or a long term goal? Because if it's a short term, it will require more of your attention and more obsession. And so you have to meticulously add it into your day to day, your week to week, and depending on the timeline to be able to accomplish it. So this is for my business. Then I'm just gonna take this out. These are all the assignments that I have for my PhD, and it's right with my master's diploma. It's hanging by it, so I know what date and what presentation or assignment is due and how much percentage it is. And I did it by order of my classes. So I know each week what is due. So now knowing this information, knowing what holidays are coming up, if I have a long weekend or if I have like a client launch and whatnot, I look at it from a weekly, monthly perspective. And then I start blocking around and seeing how I can switch things, if I can switch any meetings or appointments to later or scheduling anything to make sure that I prioritize myself at the end of the day and my capacities. Or if I can give work to my team members that they can take over while I work on something else. When you hire the right people that understand your mission and like understand what you're trying to accomplish, it is easier to be like, hey, I need you to dedicate 4 hours to this project because I really can't. I need ABC done. Let's meet up in 72 hours at 11 a.m. and go over it. If you have any questions, just text me. That way you just put off something. And that's what I really like what Dennis said about the ego. It's really not about the ego. There's no ego in business. Like the second that there's a lot of ego, you're losing because you can't, like, as much as you're able to do everything alone, and trust me, I love working alone, but you have to have people, you have to have that system, the working engine system to be able to function. So in summary, create an organization on your weekly on paper, transfer it to tools like on your cell phone that you actually, you know what, I'll be cool enough to show you this. This is how it looks like. And it's been looking like that. I don't even know what month where we're going, but it's been nonstop of just colorful calendars. But I'm able to run a full-time business, do PhD full-time, and by doing my PhD, like I had to look at courses that are in the evening, right? In order to be able to have to work. And so I had to sacrifice some things and be like, okay, the courses are in the evening. I have about 4 hours to work. And then I can, while I'm in school, I can give the work to my team members. And I'm about to publish the book. So now we're in like publication stuff. And I'm working on that at night. So sometimes from like 9 p.m. to 2, 3 a.m. Just to try to get that done and then back at it at 8 a.m. So what's my why? I am very, very clear on my why. And now I just have to organize it. And then I feel Dennis and Nick said the same thing. You organize it, but then it's how you execute it. And once you know how these three things, then you'll be able to do as many things as you want, but and understand that there's a short-term goals and long-term goals. And long-term goals can go from 6 months to 10 years. You just have to understand how important it is to you and how it is relatable to your why.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susanna. Like, and I like that you connect the why to the how and how you do it, and you showcase it in a way that, to be honest, it works and work. It doesn't work for some folks, you know. Like for you, you can see like how the gears all make sense. For others, it might be overwhelming, but I think the way you did it makes sense for you. So to go back to Tara's question, like it's got to make sense for you, right? To know what your why is, and the how also needs to make sense for you. So thank you for sharing your how, and so people can either resonate with it or go like, you know what, that's not for me, but I like what Susanna did in this way. Maybe I'll integrate it so I'm organized and I have my priorities straight, like you mentioned. All right, we have a lot of questions and less than 5 minutes to go. So we're gonna, like we said, lightning round. We're gonna blitz through this. So answers will be to the point, no fat. We're gonna cut right to the meat of it. We have a question from Michael, and this is more of a logistical one. So I'm gonna ask it to who am I gonna ask it to? I'm gonna ask it Dennis. At what point did you realize your business idea was worth pursuing from a financial perspective? Were there any formulas or methods to determine how to move on from a business venture versus the business simply needing more time and effort?
As we started, myself selling my hours was kind of a starting point. Consulting is, as I was kind of getting into it, was always told it's not a scalable business model. I kind of thought, what, there is a better way of doing it. So in our world, what we do is we sell retainers, and monthly retainers can be very profitable. So through that model, that's where we were able to just do some basic financial analysis. Like, we're at the start, it's like 1 or 2 clients. There's nothing that serious. It's very easy to peel back the onion and say, okay, well, what's my overhead? So what are my fixed costs? What are my ongoing costs, right? And am I making money? So initially, you're going to take a bit of a dip if you're in my service line of like services, but that's just because the overhead is higher. But as you kind of get to a certain scale, then you can see the business model evolve. So in our case, business model makes a lot of sense when it's managed. So like monthly big retainers. So those kind of clients are very healthy. And then on top of that, we also have a healthy amount of projects that come through. So that's our business model. I think every business is going to be different and unique. Like I've got probably a dozen agency owner friends that all have different ways that they make money. Some are heavily on projects, some are heavily on retainers. Managed services monthly works best for us because it eliminates that risk. So I hope that helps, at least if you're starting up an agency. 100% encourage you to look at retainers because it eliminates a lot of that stress of having to sell projects, and you hire up a team member, now you have to let them go if you don't have those projects, right? So that kind of formula worked really well for myself and for the team.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm gonna keep blitzing through the questions. Another tactical one, and I'll open up to the floor. So this is from Tequilia. How do you secure funding for your business in the starting stages? So, like you mentioned, Dennis, you gotta spend money to make money. In the beginning, you'll probably spend more than you'll be making at the top. But how do you secure funding in the beginning for any of the panelists?
I can open the floor to that. I didn't have funding. I had a full-time job while I did while I started my business. So I worked 9 to 5, and then I worked 6 to 2 for about 2 years before I was able to go full-time on Evolutes. And the salary that I had is what essentially funded my business, and being like really precise on where the money is going for my day-to-day living, and then my business. And once you get clients, I love the retainer idea. I did the same thing for some specific projects. It really does help monthly retainers, depending on the scope of work, obviously. But that is also another opportunity to try and start saving within the business and investing back into the business. And the money, the first year and a half of like what the clients paid me for the work, I didn't spend it or anything. I just reinvested it back into the business in order to try and grow the operations and hiring people and stuff. So you don't need, like, one of the misconceptions is that I need funding, I need like an angel investor in order to be able to start a business. But it really is finding the right people and resources. And as Dana said, there's a lot of opportunities through the government as well if you can sell and pitch your idea properly to get some type of funding or boost in order to grow your idea. So don't get discouraged if you don't have like thousands of dollars to not start your business. That's just another small excuse to not pursue what you really want to do with your life and career.
Thanks,
I
Suzanne.
agree with that quite a bit, Susanna. I think it's a bit of a crutch, to be honest. Like any entrepreneur starting, I really respect your way of getting into it because you earned your money. You knew the value of money. Every single dollar you spent, it hurt because that's the hours you put in working in the middle of the night to make that happen. So taking money from someone is a very easy endeavor to say, yeah, here it is. I'm going to spend someone else's money. Not that there's anything wrong with it. There's a way of doing it, but I'm a big proponent of making it your own way in terms of you don't have to spend actually a lot of money to make a lot of money. Like we started off with a flyer that I got printed 100 flyers and I started handing them out literally at the university to try to get my first couple of contracts. My first deal, I got paid in food, right? So how am I supposed to pay my bills with food? You can't, right? But you do whatever you need to do to order to kind of get that next step. Um, Make your ends meet at the end of the day. So if you have to have a day job in order to sustain this, be logical. Don't put yourself or your family at risk on those kind of things. But it's, don't look at funding as your answer because you're just going to spend your time spinning your wheels on that. You might get some success, but it's not going to sustain you. So it's going to be a short-term little burst. You're going to get some money. Great. Now what? So 2 years later, you're going to be able to sustain your staff on that? No, right? So it's just like it's vaporware. It's just a distraction. Hopefully that doesn't discourage anyone, but Nick, on to you. I'm sure you have some great insights on this too.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with both of your points. I bootstrapped my way through Pantheon and, investing and getting funding, it really has to make sense for your startup that you're trying to create. Just for somebody that's bootstrapped, I would say try that route. If you can do it that way, then it makes every win that much more valuable because it is that money that you've made going back into your company and then creating more success in the future. But again, that's not to say that funding might be an avenue for a startup. It really just depends on the situation, and at the end of the day, if it makes sense for your unique case.
Thank you, Nick. And I know we're getting close to time and we have some questions left, but everyone who's asked one has pretty much had at least one of their questions answered. The last one I want to mention is I think Miriam asked a question about would you recommend seeking a mentor who has experience with generally operating a business like e-commerce? If so, how would you find one or learn from one? I'm going to answer that one on behalf of the panelists. Dennis, you mentioned earlier about e-commerce. Would it be cool if Miriam reached out to you to learn more about your journey? Perfect. You got the thumbs up. So Miriam, if you're looking for a mentor, Dennis has put his thumbs up to reach out on LinkedIn, whether it's himself or someone else who can help connect you. Definitely reach out. And hopefully that's a efficient answer to your question that I think mentorship is very helpful and definitely recommended, which is why we do events like this. So I just want to thank you, Nick, for your answer as well too. I think you've kind of covered on some of the things mentioned by Susanna and Dennis. But with that, we have 2 minutes left. So I'm gonna do the closing remarks for this panel. And first off, I just gotta say this was very insightful. I think you can't imagine this was an hour because we have so many questions. We went right into it, got a lot addressed and talked about a lot of things. But I just want to say thank you to our panelists for your time, your fantastic insights and perspectives, all variable but also all valuable. And of course to our attendees for taking the time to do this with us today. Before we conclude, just a few things that I want to say. I just wanted to say, one, in terms of resources, there's in terms of funding, there's Start Engine. If you want to look into that, that's a practical resource for looking to fundraising. Owner is a website, OWNR, for those who want to incorporate or want help with the legal aspect of it. They're not funded by us. This is just me giving a personal opinion. If you want something tactical, we've had a lot of tactical, philosophical, and personal questions today, but just want to give you off some resources. And speaking of resources, you can attend our LinkedIn group or follow us on Facebook by searching York University Alumni. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter at at York U Alumni. Definitely give us feedback about this, your experiences, other programming that you would like. We're always open to that as well too. If you prefer email, alumni@yorku.ca is the way to go. Some of our panelists mentioned York U's Top 30 Under 30 program. Currently, it's a perfect time. We're actually accepting applications and nominations for that. It ends on Monday. So for those who are interested, the Top 30 program aims to recognize inspiring and diverse alumni aged 29 and younger who drive to make a difference locally and globally. So if you want to nominate yourself or others, you have until October 23rd to do so. And we also have another panel coming up, Working Abroad Young Alumni Panel and Q&A, which is happening on November 7th at 12 p.m. Similar to this one, check out yorku.ca/alumni and friends for more information on that event and more. With that, exactly at 1 o'clock, we made it right to the cutoff time. Just want to thank you all for joining. Thank you to Susanna, Dennis, Nick for your time. Thank you to all the great questions and for all the attendees for doing so. Thank you for York University for putting us on this event, and we'll see you at the next one. Take care, everyone.